Hi, my name is Hannah Kindree, and I'm a master's student at Michigan State University studying cybercrime and digital investigations. At the university, I also work in MSU IT as lead accessibility assistant, and I'm also president of Accessibility Professionals at MSU, which is a club that aims to match people interested in accessibility with professionals in the field for mentorship and learning opportunities. I'm also a lead for the Teach Access Student Ambassador Program. For me personally, accessibility has always been something that I have been aware of, even when I didn't necessarily know the name for it. I grew up with a disabled parent, so we always had to keep track of what physical accommodations there were at places we went to and things like that. And I also have learning disabilities. So moving through school, I realized I couldn't read as well as everybody else, I couldn't write as well as everybody else. And when I got tested, I was able to get accommodations for the things that I needed. So I was allowed to have a laptop instead of physically writing things out with pen and paper and things like that. So around this time, I also got really involved with learning about accessibility and disability and culture through social media and things like that. I followed a lot of disabled content creators, so I was able to learn a lot about the culture and what these specific people needed in terms of accommodations and things like that. But it wasn't until college where I was able to actually get involved in accessibility as like a career. So I kind of stumbled upon my role right during COVID. Michigan State realized, oh wow, we have a lot of these videos being uploaded to our video platform and we do not have enough people to caption them. So they hired about 100 student captioners to try to keep up with the sheer amount of videos being uploaded to our video platform. So I was able to be one of those 100 students, and I kind of stayed in accessibility from there. When that program eventually got shut down, I got moved to the team I'm currently on, which is more general accessibility. I give trainings on accessibility and also help remediate specific documents to make them more accessible. But accessibility has kind of always been in my life. During college, I got diagnosed with different chronic illnesses and autoimmune diseases, so I had to learn how to navigate my own disabilities while also working in accessibility, which is really cool. It was kind of tough, but I was able to kind of learn what accommodations I needed, and being able to have that language was really helpful for me just based on my previous experiences with learning about disability and culture and accessibility. And now, even though I'm not studying things related to accessibility, I've been able to incorporate accessibility into pretty much everything I do. All of my hobbies, I go out of my way to learn about the accessibility of the things I play and consume, like media, video games, and things like that. So I've been pretty lucky since I work in accessibility. I haven't really had to think much about applying accessible practices into my work because that's my entire job. But in past internships that I've had and just kind of my daily life, I can see myself applying accessible practices. Whether that's when I'm writing a paper for school, I make sure that all of the headings are proper and that the text contrast is good. But also, when I was in a past internship, I noticed that our training documents were pretty inaccessible. So I asked my supervisor, hey, just for future reference, am I okay to change these documents a little bit to make sure that they're accessible for everybody? And once I got the go ahead, I was able to go ahead and change that. As someone who's not really planning on going into accessibility as a full time career, it's kind of exciting to me knowing that I can make a difference in whatever career I end up in because I know a lot of people just don't know about accessibility, but once they're aware of it, they're really, really open to learning about accessibility if you phrase it right. So I'm very excited and grateful that I have this opportunity in the future to be able to incorporate accessible practices into whatever I do, whether that's writing papers or doing something a little bigger in my future career. So I approach conversations about advocacy and accessibility a lot of different ways in my daily life. I find it pretty easy because as a chronically ill and disabled individual, I'm able to talk about what accessibility needs I have and kind of bring it up casually in conversation. So whether that's when I'm out with my friends and I mention, hey, my chronic pain is flaring up, do you mind if we take a break? Or I talk about my learning disabilities and how that affects me and my hobbies. Like, for example, I absolutely love reading, but I have pretty severe dyslexia. So I either use Open Dyslexic if I'm able to in an ebook format, change the font to Open Dyslexic because it's one of the things that really helps me, or I just listen to audiobooks. And whenever I talk about reading, I like to mention, oh, yeah, I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I have dyslexia. So reading like physical books is really difficult for me. And that right there opens up the conversation to talk about accessibility needs. Another thing that I do is I follow a lot of disabled content creators. So I will either repost or share their content to my social medias, or I'll talk about them to my friends. Like, oh my gosh, this creator that I posted this a really, really funny video. You should check it out. And I recommend them to pretty much everybody I talk to because a lot of the creators I follow have really, really interesting takes on disability and accessibility. They're from a variety of different countries as well. So that's really helpful for me as an American learning about, for example, like what accessibility looks like in Europe. Another thing that I do is I incorporate accessibility into conversations about some of my other hobbies. So, for example, I am an avid video gamer. So, whenever a new game comes out, I look for what the company and what this game studio says about the accessibility of their games. And there's a lot of people that also do this. There's a variety of websites and people writing articles about the accessibility of games. For example, I just played a new game, and the first thing I did was go into the accessibility settings of the menu, and I was able to kind of tweak all of the settings to making the experience more enjoyable and playable for me. And I always talk about that whenever I play games where I'm like, oh, this game would have been fun, but the accessibility settings or the lack of accessibility settings make it so I'm not able to play and enjoy the game, and that's really sad. So I really think bringing it up very casually in conversation is super effective for me personally because I'm able to bring up this information and introduce people to new things in a way that's super casual and it doesn't feel like a super academic conversation. Because I feel like some conversations about accessibility, people immediately just kind of dismiss it. They're like, well, I'm not disabled. I don't know disabled people, so I don't need to know this. And even something as small as referring to something as assistive technology when it's not typically considered assistive technology can be super helpful. So, for example, because I have a variety of learning disabilities, a lot of my writing and whenever I need to write papers or things like that, I use a speech to text function. And whenever I talk about writing papers, I'm like, man, I definitely would not have been able to get this done if not for the speech to text function. I'm so glad that this has that assistive technology. And a lot of the times people go, oh, that's assistive technology. I thought assistive technology was something like screen readers. And that opens up the conversation for me to go, oh, yeah, well, screen readers are assistive technology, but that's not just what assistive technology is. It can be something as small, even though it's not small, as speech to text, or something as physical as like a wheelchair. And so I'm able to kind of bring that up in casual conversations and just talking about my experience is really, really helpful because I found that people want to learn, but a lot of the times people are hesitant to bring it up. So for me, when I bring it up, that gives the opportunity to people to ask questions. And I feel like growing that knowledge base is super, super helpful for just getting people interested in accessibility. And if I can change just one person's life a little bit because they're more aware of things that either they can do to make the things that they create more accessible or just how to interact with other disabled people in their life, I'm really happy that I'm able to make that change.